It's like The Hangover with murder, basically. Dang, I knew I was gonna forget the name of it. This book could not be further from amazing. This came out last year, maybe? Does anybody care when it came out? Almost got spoiler on you. Hey everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. You are joining me in the middle of my what I read this summer situation. And it's not really a series, it's just that I dropped off the planet for a couple of months, so I'm playing catch up here. So today is going to be part 2 of what I read in no particular order. And there's a lot of books to talk about, so we are just going to, with the chit chat, and dive right in. Let's talk books. So the first book I wanted to talk about is The Last Flight by Julie Clark. This was one of my most anticipated books of 2020, and I have to say I totally flew through it. There were a lot of things about it I like. This is a thriller mystery-ish, and this is sort of front flap, not too much information. It is 2 women who are basically both trying to escape their lives for different reasons, and they wind up meeting at the airport and they wind up switching tickets. And one of the planes goes down. So we wind up seeing 2 different perspectives. So for the woman who's on the plane that goes down, we see sort of everything leading up to her wanting to escape her life. And for the woman whose plane doesn't, we see her then inserting herself into the other lady's life because now she is technically presumed dead. So she sort of infiltrates the other woman's life, and then we see her perspective in the present tense. So I very much enjoyed it. I very much liked the different perspectives, the kind of questions, the what ifs. This was a fast read. It was super quick. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. It's not like crazy huge, but I really enjoyed Julie Clark's writing. I liked the women. I thought it was just interesting and well done. It did not disappoint at all. Not a 5-star read, but not a bad read. I would put it at like a solid 4 for me. I have mixed thoughts about the ending. Check out my Goodreads if you want to see that for various reasons, but I would still recommend picking it up. I thought it was fun. The next book is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyenka Braithwaite. And this was huge on BookTube last year, and I read this back in June. And it's a very short book, but it packs a very big punch. And the title kind of tells you everything. My Sister the Serial Killer. So we sort of open with that. And it is no secret that Corrida's sister, Ayula, kills the men she dates. And, you know, in self-defense, maybe. But it seems like everybody that Ayula dates dies. And her sister covers it up for her. So what happens is, so Corrida is, I don't know if she's a nurse or a physician's assistant, and she has sort of had this big time crush on one of the doctors there. And her sister is described as like, you know, totally beautiful, and men just sort of fall at their feet for her and, you know, buy her things and sweep her off her feet, and she just can basically charm any man. So when she comes to visit Corrida at the hospital one day, her crush falls for her, and it becomes, you know, she has to save this man or save her sister because she's worried her sister's gonna kill this man, basically. But this is very surface level. There's so much more depth to this book, and again, small book, huge punch. And we kind of go forward and backwards in time, and we understand the women's upbringing and their family dynamics, and it is as dark as you could imagine based on the title, and it's twisty, and there's, I think, you know, one of the most interesting parts of this book is the exploration of the relationship between the sisters and also the family dynamic. It's not like a typical mystery thriller, despite how I've probably described it. So there is a lot of sort of family saga to it, family drama to it. There is obviously an element of mystery in some sense, or murder, obviously, in some sense, or killings in some sense. But I very much enjoyed it. Again, not what I had expected, but not in a bad way. but I feel like I was kind of warned that it wasn't like a straight up thriller book, but it's a very dark book. So that's probably why it appealed to me as well. But I enjoyed this one, so I'm glad I finally got to it. The next book I wanted to talk about is one that if anyone had told me I would love this book, I would have said you were crazy, because I don't really read romances anymore. And I used to really enjoy them, but you know, somewhere I made a dark, hard turn into just thrillers. But I have been making such a conscious effort, probably even over like the last year, to really diversify what I'm reading, to stay open-minded, to pick up things I normally wouldn't gravitate to listen to the recommendations of the other booktubers that I follow and I love and who I trust implicitly. And I've been super moody lately, like a lot of people, and you know, the world's been weird. So I finally was like, you know what, I'm just gonna give this audiobook a go. And halfway through the audiobook, I wound up ordering the book because I needed to have it, and because it basically melted my cold heart. I'm like the Grinch when it comes to some of this stuff, it seems. But it's red, white, and royal blue, Stumbling. So if you follow me on Instagram, this is not news because I raved about it there, by Casey McQuiston. So this is the fake results of the 2016 election, where a woman won the election, and the first family, she's basically like prepping for her re-election. So it's sort of like in present day. So it's kind of weird because it ramps up to the 2020 election. So it's kind of really sort of surreal timeline wise, but she's the first female president, first family. And then it is the sort of faux royal family, and the first son and Prince Henry, I keep wanting to call him Prince Harry for all the obvious reasons, are basically kind of mortal enemies. But to keep the peace and to help keep his mom look good for re-election, Alex, who's the first son, and Henry, I keep wanting to call him Harry, basically need to have like a fake bromance, which turns into full-blown romance. And when I tell you I was here for this, I was here for this book. I wound up listening to the entire thing on audio, but I was like tabbing, you can see some of the tabs here, bookmarking the audiobook. But it just hit me in all the places. Like, I loved them. The audiobook is amazingly done. Just every time Alex mutters the word sweetheart, my entire heart melts. They're so wonderful together. There are some of those typical romance tropes about like will they, won't they, and misunderstandings and star-crossed lovers and all of this stuff. But it's great. Alex's network of people are great. Henry's network of people are great. I loved the writing. I loved the story. All of it. All of it, all of it, all of it. So even if you're not like a romance person, like I wasn't, I can't recommend this book enough. This just completely hit me in all the places I didn't even know I needed to be hit. And I'm excited to reread it and actually physically read it this time round. But the audiobook is tremendous. And I loved it with a whole heart that I didn't even know I had. Okay, so next up is a book that I thoroughly did not enjoy. And I listened to the audiobook of The Last to Die by Kelly Garrett. And this is a book, and P.S. does anyone else get excited that that was Charlie's Angels, Jacqueline Smith, like I did? No. This was a book that sounded really up my alley. And like, the premise was so good. And this was a case of like, the book just didn't deliver on the premise. So for one, the book was like 4 pages long. This was like the shortest dang book ever. I think the audiobook was 4.5 hours or something like that. It's like basically like a novella, I guess. And this is about a bunch of privileged high school kids who, and it reminded me of The Bling Ring. So they party and they drink and they've been friends forever. And I think it's like 6 or 7 of them in the circle, but they're kind of bored with like their partying, drinking, drugs, rich-ish kind of existence, I guess. So they like hatch a plan to break into other people's houses for the thrill and the exhilaration. And this is like back cover premise. And when the book opens, they're like knee deep into the breaking into people's houses. So like the game is already afoot basically. And there's a bunch of rules about what they can and cannot do and can and cannot take, and like whose houses they target and all this stuff. And then like on the back of the cover, it's like, and then somebody dies and everything changes. Sounds amazing, right? This book could not be further from amazing. And I've had this conversation about YA, and there's like a whole bunch of YA that like I wasn't reading and didn't read, and I felt like I was too old, but yet I watched like all these YA TV shows. So I started reading a bunch of YA books, and there's so much tremendous YA thriller out there. Wait for it. This book made me feel super old, and maybe if I was younger or hadn't read so much great YA mystery, Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Truly Devious, the Charlotte Holmes series, then maybe my expectations would be different. But for one, I was super lost, which makes absolutely no sense, because again, this book is not that long. I don't know if they went to like private school or public school. I don't wholly understand all of their parental situations, like whose parents are divorced, whose are together. There was like this like low-key mom's an alcoholic, but she isn't an alcoholic, but she kind of is an alcoholic. And do they live in a gated community like the Real Housewives of Orange County, or do they not? Do they just live in like some rich suburban something or another? Like, it was all very fuzzy. And then there was like some angst amongst the friend group in the sense of like, why are you people even friends? Like, you don't even seem to like each other. So like, how are you even friends with each other? It's not even like there's like the one annoying person in the group that everyone tolerates. It just didn't make sense. And then like, don't even get me started on the ending, which was so preposterous. And I did rage about this in my Goodreads review, and it's blinded for spoilers. So if you want to read it, you can go into it. And if you want to click on the spoiler, you can. But I don't say this lightly, but when I say the ending of this book was so dumb and so implausible, and I can suspend disbelief like the best of them. I am a Pretty Little Liars TV show fanatic, so you know I can suspend my disbelief. So stupid. So stupid from what sort of brought our hero to confront the bad person, to what the bad person did, to the reveal, if you will, and the motive, and then the finale. Awful. Don't read this book. Don't listen to this book. Go right past it. I should have looked at reviews on it, but I didn't, and I listened to it, and it was 4.5 hours I'll never get back. Like, whatever, 3.5, because I listened to it a little bit fast. But listen to the whole stupid thing, and I had to like rewind it at certain points to be like, did I miss something that's obvious? But like, it was not well edited or written. It hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. Let's talk good mystery. Anthony Horowitz, the word is murder. I almost said somebody else's book. I bought this book 100 years ago. My dad actually wanted to borrow it because he was looking for something to read. And I was like, no problem. I was gonna see him in like a week, and I was like, but I'm gonna read it first. And I did. And I feel like I might have talked about this in my mid-year thing. But anyway, this was such a fun book, but it's not typical in two different ways. Way number one is, back at the book here, a woman is strangled 6 hours after organizing her own funeral. Did she know she was going to die? Did she recognize her killer? How crazy is that? You go to plan your funeral and then you wind up getting murdered? Love that. And then we have our detective Daniel Hawthorne, and he's sort of like this grouchy, kind of difficult to work with, but kind of a genius detective. And he would like to have his life story written. So he hires Anthony Horowitz to write his story. So Horowitz inserts himself into the book as a character. Obviously it's fiction. This is not like true crime, but there's so much fact of Anthony Horowitz's life in it. So it's like this weird blurred line between fact and fiction. And I completely enjoyed it. And it's totally different from Magpie Murders, stylistically, writing style, all of that. But it's equally ingenious to how this book was done, because that's a book within a book, which is something I'm slowly becoming trash for. But I really enjoyed it. This is the first in a series. I do have the second book, Sentence's Death, way up high, which I am going to read. And my dad actually read that one and said it was better than this one, so I'm more intrigued by that. But if you're looking for a good, again, like typical but not typical detective mystery, this one was really good. I liked the clues, I liked the connections, I liked the solve for the murder. I thought it was really well done, and I just very much enjoyed the tongue-in-cheek Horowitz kind of poking fun at himself, but at the same time, like I said, weaving that fact and fiction into it. So really well done, really creative spin on how to write a great mystery. The next book is another one that I talked about in my mid-year wrap-up, mid-year freakout tag, and it is Bluebird, Bluebird by Attica Locke. And this is the first in the series. She has several series. She also was one of the writers and producers behind Empire. She's in a whole bunch of stuff. She's won a whole bunch of awards. She was 100% not on my radar, but I was looking for some mystery thrillers written by Black authors, and she came high on my radar, and I am not turning back because I loved this book, love her writing. I've already picked up the sequel to it. And this is about a Texas Ranger named Darren Matthews, and he's kind of gotten himself a little bit in trouble with the Rangers, and he's a little bit on the outs. But a friend of his from high school gives him a buzz, and his friend's in the FBI, and he's like, hey, I kind of need your help with the situation we've got going on up north. And it's the Highway 95 series, 59 series. And it's an issue in this town called Lark, which is up off Highway 59. So Darren goes up to do kind of like some low-key investigating, and you know, like nothing low-key is about to happen here. So back of the book kind of story is 2 bodies have been found in the river, bayou, up there, doesn't matter, in the water. And they've been found a couple days apart. So it is the body of a Black Chicago lawyer, who he is not part of the town, obviously, kind of passing through, and it's Lark is this tiny town. And then the body of a local white woman. And the finding of these bodies, the buzz that these 2 people were seen together the night the lawyer was murdered, and the fact that he is a passer through, has no connections to the town, just basically stirs up all sorts of racial tension and issues and history with people in the town and where the bodies were found and who's keeping secrets and who knows what, and what will people do to protect these secrets, and what this woman's connection to this man is, and what her connection is to the rest of the town. And it's a whole lot of stuff. And then the lawyer's wife comes to kind of try and find out what happened to her husband, and her and Darren, who is married, start to investigate things together. But there's a lot of complications. We've got Darren's personal life, we've got Darren's work life, his life with the Rangers, there's just so much going on here, and it is so well written. It was such a good story. I was there for it 100%. It really touches on so many different issues and raises so many different questions. The only thing, and I feel like maybe I said this might have been in my Goodreads review, my only criticism is, and this happened with a few books that I read, there was what I would call character soup in the first couple chapters. So we start in the town of Lark, and these are no spoilers in any way, but we get introduced to like a whole slew of characters there. And then we flip to Darren before he gets the call from his friend. And there's like a whole bunch of characters there. So I was really lost, I would say, in the muddle for the first 2 chapters. Once Darren is like in the car up to Lark, I understood who those first chapter characters were, but I almost feel like we could have started without chapter 1. So I would say if you dive into this book and it feels like a whole mess of people, right there with you, but stay with it because it's completely worth it. But other than that, totally enjoyed it. Enjoyed the solve of it. I enjoyed, again, the writing of it. And I'm excited to see what happens next to Darren. He is definitely, this is my freak out tag, he's definitely one of my new book crushes, because I adored this book, which sounds crazy because it's a thriller mystery, but still, loved it. The next book I listened to is Outer Order, Inner Calm by Gretchen Rubin. And she is probably most well known for her book, The Happiness Project, which I have. Actually, it's holding the camera up and I've never actually read it. But she has a podcast and she has some really interesting takeaways. But I had heard about this book, and it's the concept of, you know, when you're outside life, and we're talking like clutter and space and piles of paper and too many clothes and too much food in the cabinet and just stuff everywhere. Basically, everything going on behind the camera. How that impacts your inner calm, your anxiety, depression. There are so many scientific studies about this, but basically bringing order to your physical world can bring order to your inner world. And if you have been following me since the beginning, I attempted a decluttering project early on in my booktube career, and I was reading a bunch of books, and I mean I read the Marie Kondo book years ago when it first came out, and I mean I am a try and fail declutterer, and I, like many people in this time that we're in right now, have just felt very out of control, feeling out of control because things are out of control. I cannot control what's going on in the world around me. All I can control is literally what's going on in the four walls that I live, and even there's days where I can't control this. So I have been craving things that give me control. I'm a control freak, as you can probably tell. So I listened to this book. It's super short. I would say easy breezy. Gretchen Rubin narrates it. There's nothing earth-shattering in this book though. So if you are a like deep diver on the decluttering train and have read a bunch of books or listened to a bunch of books, there's nothing new here. She's encouraging with a little bit of a tough fist. She has, you know, she's got a great easy voice. It's like having your best friend come over and like tell you to get it together basically. But there were no like killer takeaways in this book where I was like, this is the switch that flipped. And again, I don't know how much I'm gonna talk about it here. I'm kind of debating doing this, so we'll see. But I have been turned on to like a bunch of like YouTube videos that kind of have flipped a switch in me, and I have started to declutter, like for real this time. And I will definitely film my book declutter when I do that and share it with you guys, and I'm debating sharing more than that, so we'll see. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. But anyway, this book was like easy breezy. It was like a 4-hour book. I listened to it probably over the course of like a couple walks that I took, and it was good in like a feel-good kind of a way, but nothing earth-shattering. So I would say if you're new to the game or looking for like a little bit of like best friend advice to just sort of like kind of get you in the mood or like get you back on the decluttering train, give it a go. Nothing bad to say, but nothing like, oh, wasn't amazing. Okay, next up is a book that I was super excited about. It was another 2020 release, and there was a lot about it I liked, but it kind of missed the mark in some ways for me, which is kind of a bummer. And that is The Girls' Weekend by Jody Gurman. So this is another one of my most favorite tropes. We have a whole bunch of girlfriends from college who reunite 15, 20 years later? 15, 20 years later. And one of the girls, who of course is our hero's nemesis, who winds up being like totally successful and winds up marrying our narrator's ex and becomes this famous writer and has this super duper house, mansion, theoretically this perfect life and her perfect daughter, and they live in this like completely remote area. So you know what's about to happen here, right? We have an isolated mystery. All the friends get back together again, and we've got old resentments and things that just have been festering for years, and we've got like weird dynamics between them, and the husband's there, and there's all this drama, and there's like another dude that's there, and we've got a night of just debauchery. We've got drinking, we've got drugs, we've got a whole bunch of people just trying to numb all of the rage that's going on between them. And wouldn't you know, we wake up the next morning and our nemesis is missing. and there's a bunch of blood on the wall and nobody remembers what happened last night. It's like The Hangover with murder, basically. And they can't find one of their friends. So we have a long weekend. So we've got the ticking time clock trope, and we need to figure out where the heck Sadie is and what the hell happened last night. And it is them trying to piece it together. So legit, it is like The Hangover with murder. Not funny though. It's not supposed to be funny. But it just didn't totally do it for me. So there were a lot of parts that I really did like, and there were parts that I was totally into. I did the audiobook. I don't know if I said that. The writing wasn't bad, but I didn't love the ending, basically is what it is. I did not feel like it packed a punch. I didn't feel like it was a surprise. I didn't feel like there was like enough tension in it. And the red herrings felt super obvious in some ways. And I think I just totally didn't connect with the main character. I think that was a big part of it. So like Judy, June Moody. Her name is June Moody. That's probably also partially what annoyed me. I didn't connect with her. She just felt a little bit too wishy-washy for me. There were other characters in the friend group that I liked a whole lot more, and I kind of wish one of them were the narrator. Like, I feel like we needed more of a badass main character. So she was a little bit too much of like a wet blanket and a doormat for my taste. So close, but not totally what I wanted it to be. I wanted more out of it. Loved the premise, loved the setup, loved parts of it, but ultimately did not love June, did not love the ending. So I've read better. I've read better in this wrap up that we're going to talk about. The next book I listened to is nonfiction, and it is called All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. And he narrates the book himself. And I just have to say, this was such a well done book. It's such a well done audiobook. I highly recommend it on audio. I love when the author is the narrator. And this is one of those books that will warm your heart and break your heart. And at times is very difficult to listen to, and at times is, well, not even at times. It is completely impactful and powerful to listen to, but there are some very difficult passages. This book is written in a series of essays, and it chronicles his adolescence through college with some reflection now on adulthood. And he is an award-winning journalist, and it is a series of essays about his experience. He's an LGBTQIA+ activist, and it is his coming of age as a Black queer man in New Jersey and Virginia, where he eventually goes to school, and his experience with his friends and his family, and everything from when he was bullied as a child, and the incredible love and support of his family. And there's so much about his grandmother, and when he gets to college and his fraternity brothers, and he talks about everything so transparently, no holds barred, from sexual experiences, from bullying, like I said, from loss, death, grieving, family, just all of his first experiences, friendships that he had. And again, there are moments that are so heartwarming, there are moments that are so devastatingly difficult to listen to, but I think anybody can listen to this and take something from it, and to listen to his experience. And again, it just such frank, raw conversation and essays. It completely blew me away. I had heard about it. I want to say Julie from Pages and Pens is where I learned about this book, and like immediately grabbed it and just loved it. So really well done. Go in with some caution in the sense that this is not the easiest book to listen to, but 100% a worthwhile book to listen to. And again, highly recommend the audiobook, because I think it just adds such a different level. Again, I love it when an author does their own book, the inflection, the emotion that you get from it of how they intended the book to be read. Just really enjoyed it. Really, really enjoyed it. The next book I picked up is I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick. And I had heard a bit about this book. Sorry, this has a bit of a glossy cover, so it's going to reflect a bit with the light. And this is the book. I posted this on Instagram too, if you follow me. That's like the beautiful blue. Every book needs to be this amazing. And this is a YA mystery set on the Hamptons. And we've got dual timelines. We've got a little bit of podcast. We've got a great mystery, and it basically has all the things that I love in a book. And I loved this book. There's a map too. I love a map. And I just completely enjoyed it. It was reminiscent to me a bit of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. So this book opens with our main character, Anna, who had a nannying job out on the Hamptons. So it is the summer between her senior year in high school and her freshman year in college. She's looking to make some money, good gig, one kid, super fancy people living out in the Hamptons. And she comes out in June, but the book opens in August with Kit. Kit is the author. This is the third time I've done that, but we're just gonna talk through it. With Anna sitting in the police station confessing to killing Zoe Spanos. So, a couple problems with this. One being that Anna got to the Hamptons in June for her nannying gig, and Zoe went missing New Year's Day. So she went to a New Year's Eve party and was never seen again. So we go backwards in time and we start to try and figure out what exactly happened. And poor Anna, girl's confused. Girl is confused. And then we have the best friend of Zoe's sister, who is trying to help her best friend cope with Zoe's missing, and she has created a podcast. So we get little weaves of the podcast, we get present day, we get past the summer when Anna first arrives in the Hamptons and her summer there, and all the players and all the things. And I just really enjoyed it. It was a fast read. I thought it was well done. It wasn't the most groundbreaking ending, but I was satisfied with the ending. So I would give it a go. I would absolutely give it a go. If you're looking for a good mystery thriller, if you're looking for those kinds of tropes, if these are things that excite you the way they excite me, I would definitely read it. And it's beautiful. So that is gonna do it for part 2 of what I read this summer. More to come. I'm reading a lot of really good books, which I'm excited about. I'm glad I read so much that I normally would not have picked up, because I definitely had some good surprises, a couple of duds, it happens. But if you want to hear the rest of the books, you're gonna have to tune in for part 3, and that'll be up sooner rather than later because I've already filmed it. So I will see you guys in that video. Thanks for spending some of your day with me. I hope everyone is doing really well, and I will see you soon. So bye everybody.